Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am the Spell Singer, and this is the beginning of a brand new series of gamebook reviews for the epic saga known as Lone Wolf. Now this review is going to give you the usual title with its book number. I'll do a quick origin story followed by blurb and covers, and then I'll talk a bit about the plot and the locations for this book, go over some of the game mechanics and the character sheet, and then I'll run the artwork through this video, talk a bit about some fun facts, and I'll talk about my own likes and dislikes, give a summary and a score, and I will finish on a shout out for someone who, if you like these books, you'll definitely be interested in. So yeah, this is going to be book one. This is Flight from the Dark, so the very first episode of the Lone Wolf saga, and this was written by Joe Dever, and it was published way back in 1984 with artist Gary Chalk, who was on board with him for quite some time. So Joe Dever and Gary Chalk, really good combination for this series of books. But let me give you a quick origin story so you can sort of see how this whole world came about. Lone Wolf is critically acclaimed 1980s gamebook series, like I say, by British author Joe Dever and illustrator Gary Chalk, debuting in 1984 with this Flight from the Dark, originating from Dever's kind of personal Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. The series was unique, allowing players to kind of character progress across multiple books in this fantasy world of Magnamund. And Joe Dever was the first British winner as well of the Advanced D&D Championships in America in 1982, which inspired him to turn his custom game world into kind of an interactive gamebook series. And this first book, Flight of the Dark, was published, like I say, in 1984 by Hutchinson Publications Group in the UK. And it just became a massive hit immediately. So unlike other game books, of that time, Lone Wolf kind of offered a persistent, evolving story where readers could, track their skills and items across a series of 31 game books. So unprecedented. Really nothing like it at that time. And the books follow the last of the Darklords. So Lone Wolf in this fantasy world of Magnamund, kind of featuring a blend of storytelling, combat mechanics, without really needing dice, although you can use a D10 if you want, but it had a cool little mechanic, which I'll talk to you a bit about later to sort of get around that. And the series has sold over 12 million copies worldwide. After Joe Dever's passing, the series was completed by his son, Ben Dever, and collaborator Vincent Lazzari. So together they kind of finished off the series in a really epic way. The series is known for its really immersive world, with the first 12 books forming the core Kai and Magna Kai series, which established the popularity of this franchise. Now Dever, he developed the world of Magnamund way back in 1975 all the way up to 1983 as a setting for his Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. And originally called Chinaru, the world consisted of only sort of northern Magnamund to begin with, and the Darklords had these special powers bestowed upon them by their gods. An individual book took about 9 weeks to write, with 3 for mapping and then 6 for the writing of the story, so creating on average about 12 entries per day. Now Dever was originally contracted by London-based publisher Hutchinson Books for only 4 books to begin with, despite having planned at least 13 of the series at that point. When the first books proved to be popular, Dever was allowed an extension of contract and went on to write 20 books with Lone Wolf as the main hero, and 8 more featuring a new Darklord as well. He also developed the character Greystar during this period. 4 books were written using this character by Ian Page. So there you go, there's a little breakdown. But the actual series, so what is it comprised of? Well, the Kai series is the first 5 game books. So game books 1 to 5 follows Lone Wolf as he rallies his armies of Summerland and her ally Duranor to repel the invasion. They are the pursuers and the captors and traitors who brought about this invasion and plotted the destruction of the Kai. And the Magna Kai series is game books 6 to 12, and that kind of continues the tale with Lone Wolf, who's now a fledgling Kai master, striving to understand his Magna Kai teachings. And the book of the Magna Kai, however, is ancient and incomplete. So to perfect his understandings and train a new order of Kai Lords, Lone Wolf must follow the path of the Sun Eagle, the first Kai Lord and author of the book of the Magna Kai. The Grandmaster series is game books 13 to 20, and it continues the story of the Grandmasters, the Lone Wolf, and introduces the restored order of the Kai Lords. So with the destruction of the Darklords, Nar and his agents abandon open world warfare and they seek new paths to dominance. So the old ways are sort of redundant. They try some new, sort of newfangled ways to win, and often focus directly on Lone Wolf as the kind of keystone of the forces of light. The New Order series, which is game books 21 to 32, was originally intended to be 12 books long, but in January of 23, Holmgard Press announced the 12th book would be split into 2 volumes, beginning the series, and that gave it kind of a total of 13 books. Only the first 8 books were originally released before the cancellation of the series back in 1998, and it took 18 years before the next book got published. Okay, let's have a read of the blurb from my copy. So it says here, "You are the sole survivor of a devastating attack on the monastery of the Kai, who for thousands of years have protected the realm of Summerland from the Darklords. The servants of darkness hunt you across every turn of the page. You can reach the capital and warn the king of the gathering evil in time, or will you survive? Choose your skills and your weapons wisely. Your choice may be the difference between life and death in the most fantastic and terrifying journey of your life. For you are now the last of the Kai. You are the Lone Wolf. Adventure begins here." Yeah, so, now as you would imagine, these books have been around for a while, so they're going to have a whole host of covers. So, Flight from the Dark has kind of like the most unique cover in the series, in my opinion. As you can see from this image here, from the top left, you have the original Sparrow art showing Lone Wolf having just killed a Giak. And next, you got the Beaver reprint. That's kind of a younger Lone Wolf portrayed. Then the US Pacer art looks kind of generic. Following that, we've got the Red Fox art. It's great, but it doesn't really fit in with the book for me. The top right art is a French 2012 reprint from Gallimard featuring a Vordak. And then if we go on to the second row, the Mongoose art. It's a quite decent look, quite eye-catching. It's by Alberto Del Lago. And next, you've got this green bordered Spanish cover. Has quite a nice theme to it. And the new art for the Italian book issued from Vincent Books is also by Alberto Del Lago. It's quite decent, kind of showing Lone Wolf fleeing the monastery. And then you have this Spanish reprint from Timon Mas, which is art featuring a kind of muscly, shirtless Lone Wolf. So going for a slightly different look there. It's kind of a continuing theme throughout the books they published, actually. And finishing the second row is a newer French reprint from Gallimard and features a Vordak. And if we go to the third row, the Bulgarian cover has kind of a generic art lifted from Dragonlance, as is all the Bulgarian edition art. No real link to the events in the book as such. And then similarly is the Serbo-Croatian cover. The Danish cover with a black holder and a kind of snake is also quite basic. This sole Hungarian book from Totem uses modified Pacer art, giving Lone Wolf the summer sword in book 1, which is kind of odd because you don't get it till book 2. And the row finishes off with a cover from Check Market, which kind of shows something very weird, not really 100% sure what is going on there. And for the fourth row, we've got two Swedish variants here. The first was done by Gary Chalk and the second by Lucas Thalen. And then in 2021, Gallimard released for the extended version with a sort of Vordak in the middle here. And this is followed by the Home Guard publishing of 2021, that definitive edition. And then finally on this row, we've got the Gallimard first edition, similar to that kind of red fox one that we saw earlier. And then for the final bottom row, we have the 2022 Gallimard Collector Edition, kind of Vordak artwork again. And then we have Jambo's new 2023 release for the Brazilian market. And they've got really cool depiction of Lone Wolf there. And next to Home Guard's 2024 Junior Edition with a more cartoon take on the protagonist. And finally, we've got that 40th anniversary variant cover from Vincent Books using Gary Chalk's art from the French version. So there you go, those are all the covers. Well, I don't think I missed any out, but comment if I did. So let's have a chat about the plot for this book with the locations. So, from all those pitched battles against evil servants, the Darklords, to the kind of frantic scrambling over hillsides, forests and tunnels and all kinds of different areas, caves, your quest is to reach the safety of the city of Home Guard. So to get from the Kai monastery to Home Guard. Flight from the Dark is a very atmospheric introduction into Joe Dever's world of Lone Wolf gamebooks. You are this young Kai Lord who has sworn vengeance upon the Darklords after they launched an overwhelming assault against the monastery where all the Kai gathered for a good old feast. And as sole survivor, kind of falls on you to avenge your kin and carry a warning to the King of Summerland. And it's a simple premise, that sets in motion a kind of desperate dash across a land marred by death and war. And the adventure itself, it's almost straightforward really. The greatest threat to you that you'll face is the sheer number of enemies, wild beasts, and all the different monsters that you're likely to encounter on your travels from the monastery to Home Guard. And these foes include the servants of evil, like giants, reptilians, winged Kran, and the Giak who ride them. All the more powerful Vordaks and their riders, the lieutenants of the Darklords, so they're all out there to get you. You've got the Doom Wolves, the Drakarum, they all rove the lands around this city of Home Guard. And you'll have to encounter these huge reptilians as well, the Gorgas. And they're all locked in combat with none other than the King's son himself, which plays quite a pivotal part in this first book. Now, in terms of location, you can see from this map here, this is the map of Magnemund, and here you can see in the north, if we zoom in a bit, is the Lastlands, being the free kingdom of northern Magnemund. And if we go in even further, here is the Kai monastery, and here is Home Guard. So you can see it's not a terrible long distance, but there's plenty of action going on between those 2 points. Now let's have a chat about the game mechanics and the character sheet that you get with this book. So new mechanics in this series begins with establishing your fighting prowess. Now to do this, we need to determine combat skill. So that's your main attribute along with endurance. So you can either use the random number table provided in every single book, which looks a little bit like this image here, or a simple D10. I prefer to use the D10 myself. So yeah, Joe Dever, he kind of suggested this really charming, close your eyes and point your pencil at this random number table. But either way, you're going to receive a number. So you add 10 to this number, and then you've got your combat skill. So similarly for your endurance, you either use the table, or your D10, add 20 to that, and you'll have your endurance. So the combat skill is your ability to battle, and the endurance is your health. And of course, if it falls to 0, it's curtains. Then you have these Kai disciplines, and this is where the book really comes to life. Kai disciplines are kind of like these techniques that you can learn. and of which there are 10 matching the level of your Kai training. So from this list here, you can see the titles that are bestowed upon the Kai at each stage of their training. Now, each time you finish an adventure, you rise in Kai level and learn a new discipline. You begin the book, this one, as an initiate, so you must choose 5 disciplines from this list. So that's kind of like your beginning list of Kai disciplines. And the list to choose from includes camouflage, hunting, sixth sense, tracking, healing, weapons skill, mind shield, mind blast, animal kinship, and mind over matter. So each is unique. So from this little video here, you've got camouflage, which allows you to kind of blend in with your surroundings. You've got the hunting, which prevents you from going hungry, and you can kind of avoid eating meals when instructed. Sixth sense reveals the true purpose of those you meet or describes strange objects that you might find. Tracking helps to choose paths in the wild and discover locations or people using their footprints. Healing gives you 1 endurance point for every reference you read that does not involve combat. Weapons skill offers you this list of weapons here. So you can see from this image the whole array of weapons, and all you do is you roll a d10, and whichever it matches, you then have advanced skill in using that weapon. So you get to add 2 to your combat skill. But you've still got to find that weapon. You don't start with it. Unless, of course, it's the axe, which you do start with. And then, of course, you've got Mind Shield, which kind of gives you defense options should your enemy attack you with psychic force, and thereby suffering no loss when attacked in this manner. Mind Blast is where you use the force of your mind to attack, giving you a +2 in your combat skill. We've got Animal Kinship, which kind of allows you to communicate with animals and occasionally control them. And then finally, Mind over Matter. And here you can move small objects. Equipment is also a factor in this adventure. And you can carry two weapons at any given time. So that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? 2 hands, 2 weapons. So that's quite smart. You get a chance to carry 8 items in your backpack. You can have 5 special items. And you get up to 50 gold crowns to carry as well. So you've got some limitations, which also makes sense. You don't want to be too laden when you're travelling all over Magnamund, right? Now, combat. This is where Lone Wolf really excels. You've got the enemy's combat skill and their endurance points, as given in this text and image here. And the sequence for combat is as follows. You add any extra points through your Kai disciplines to your current combat skill, and that gives you your total. And then you subtract the combat skill of your enemy from this total, and the result is your combat ratio. And then next, you roll a d10, or pick a number from that combat random table, which looks like this. And then you turn to the combat results table, which looks like this. And that shows the combat ratio numbers. You find the number matching your combat ratio, and then you cross-reference with the random number that you've picked or rolled with your d10. You now have the number of endurance points lost by both Lone Wolf and your opponent in that round of combat. And then you make the changes to the endurance for both, and then you keep doing that until it's over. So it's really smart and quite a realistic mechanic for combat. I really like this, and I think it kind of suits this book nicely. It's a little bit better than the old fighting fantasy one where you just pummel each other and lose 2 points of stamina every time you are successful. But I think this is a little bit better. It just works better for me. Now, we've got a character sheet which looks like this. So you can see at the top there, you've got your Kai disciplines. So in this case, you've got your first 5 that you start with. And then you can note next to that maybe some of the things that they gift you. Underneath, you get your weapons, 2 weapons. So you can make a note of those. And then you've got your backpack items. So the 8 items of equipment that you can carry. And then to the side of that, any meals that you pick up on your adventure. And then underneath, your special items. So you can have 5 special items. And your belt pouch where you carry all your gold crowns. And then on the other side, you get your combat skill and your endurance, so you can make a note of that. And of course underneath is all the combat records where you can note all the villains that you're going to pummel with whatever weapon it is that you have. But if you don't have a weapon and it's just fisticuffs, you have a slight disadvantage and you have to take a few points away from your combat skill. Now, let's have a chat about the artwork and some of the fun facts for this book. Now, born in Hertfordshire, Chalk began playing war games at the age of 15. He took a BA degree in design. He worked as a teacher for art and design before going freelance. He was best known for his contribution in the Lone Wolf series of gamebooks. And Chalk, he's been involved in the artwork for a number of other games and books, including a board game of Talisman and the first 6 volumes of Red Wall series. He's drawn maps for the entire selection of Warriors books by Erin Hunter as well, so he's very involved in this kind of fantasy world. And the cover by Chalk shows our hero, as you can see here, a little bit different from the original, but you can see there the hero kind of astride a crevice between rocks, hooded, brandishing a sword as arrows kind of rain down and a dark army follows in pursuit. It sets up the premise for some classic adventure action, and I love the embossing of that text, plus the colouring and the style used in this image. The internal illustrations express real certain moments, real kind of important moments, like key battles, against enormous monsters, or even simply just portraying those innocent parties that are all caught up in this war. As always, I love the interactions between the art and the story, and these images aren't overly constant, so kind of adds weight and intensity to your journey when you do see them. So I'll give you some examples of those in these reviews as I go through them. And as always, I've got a favourite picture. So this is Prince Pelethar fighting the Gorgaz. I'll read a small bit from this book just so you can get an idea of what Gary Chalk had to work from. So it says here, through the smoke and turmoil of this vicious battle, you see the prince locked in combat with a large grey Gorgaz. This scaly creature towers above the other troops and wields its huge black battle axe with terrible effect. Prince Pelethar is sheathed in silver plate armour. It gleams like a mirror in the sun. His white tabard is emblazoned with a single winged horse. His personal emblem and the razor-sharp blade of his broadsword is embellished with the proud symbols of Summerland and the House of Ulnar. Pelethar seems to be winning his deadly duel with this monstrous Gorgaz. Suddenly the prince falls wounded, a black arrow in his side. And then of course you get the chance to either defend the wounded prince or run away. So that's my favourite picture. Now, some fun facts for Flight from the Dark. This book sold over 100,000 copies within its first month. Okay, first month of publication, so that's pretty impressive, right? The series has been published in over 30 countries, sold over 12 million copies worldwide. And Joe Deaver, he was the first British winner of that advanced Dungeons and Dragons Championship in the US of A back in 1982, before sort of creating the world of Magnamund. And at the beginning of this story, this book 1, your character is actually named Silent Wolf. Yeah, you're a 16-year-old initiate, sort of in training, and you adopt Lone Wolf right at the end of this first book. Once you sort of succeed, and thereby you are Lone Wolf from there onwards. And one other little thing, there's an item in this book, the Crystal Star. Right at the start you can get this item, but it's not easy. It's kind of like a pendant. It's considered the most, or the single most important item to find in this first book, adding significantly to the Lone Wolf lore. So keep an eye out for that bad boy. Right, likes and dislikes for this book. Now, as an opening book, Flight from the Dark is right up there with Steve Jackson's Shaman Tanti Hills from that Sorcery series and Avenger from the Way of the Tiger series. It sets the world up perfectly. It kind of introduces you to the game mechanics and all those battle systems well enough. It's not too tough, not too difficult to complete, so a good opener, just right really. And the prose is rich, the art is perfectly suited, and I love that character progression from the one adventure to the next. You cannot beat that. It's relatively short, it's quite fast paced as well, quite a fast paced adventure, compared to the later sort of larger entries that we'll get to. And it functions well as kind of like a starting chapter, if you like. The original iconic pen and ink illustrations by Gary Chalk are highly regarded for establishing that kind of moody, medieval, fantasy tone. However, some readers found the adventure to be a little too short, and not as challenging as other contemporary game books that were out there at that time, like Fighting Fantasy. The story is considered quite linear. I didn't feel that myself as I was reading through these books, but also little room for sort of deviation in some sections, which might be the case. There are a few instant deaths, scenarios that can feel a bit arbitrary, maybe lacking an obvious logical reason for failure. And then, while generally fair, some specific combat encounters are noted to be quite difficult to win. But overall, it's all good. If you can cope with that, then you're sorted. Now, let's do a summary and a score for Flight from the Dark. So this is like one of the seminal game books, of the 1980s, along with Warlock of Firetop Mountain. And it's a series that is dearly loved by many. And it's still going strong to this day. The path to victory in this book was quite a short one, due to Joe Devers very deliberately crafting a number of equally valid paths that you could follow, through to the end. So lots of replayability. And the world building, it's superb. The numerous cities, all those different environments, they're all fascinating. And the journey to the capital is quite breathtaking. You certainly get the impression that your character is actually quite vulnerable, rather than the experienced warrior, that is so often the protagonist, certainly in the Fighting Fantasy books. Now, in terms of gameplay, the numerous routes to that final destination make for interesting reading, makes the book quite winnable, no matter how low your original stats. So like the old, regardless of your initial stats malarkey, you should be able to get through this book. Well, I think it rings true with Flight from the Dark. And that fight with the Gorgaz that I showed that image for a moment ago, it's quite memorable. It's built up as quite a significant battle against a foe who was just wounded, the prince of your kingdom. So taking some time and effort to kill this Gorgaz makes it quite an earned victory. I certainly felt anyway. So it's a worthy start to an epic saga. And the book offers a high level of replayability as you explore all the different routes and pathways. You'll be treated to some truly great scenes and set pieces. There's so much variety in this game book, you might actually find yourself racing to the aid of an apprentice magician, hurling lightning at a pack of Giaks, or rescuing a king soldier from being buried alive, or even stumbling upon remains of a village of massacred diggers. Lots of variety. And as to gaining entrance to the city of Holmgard, at the end, there are 3 routes to take. Each one is really satisfying, different, and relatively easy to sort of navigate. So there's not one true path, as you sometimes find. It's a truly award-winning adventure. Lone Wolf has shown the testament of time. It is beloved, played to this day, so I say no immediate change for that. It is a series that kind of stands head and shoulders above all the rest. But if this is new to you, I highly recommend it. But if you're a hardened fan, I recommend also you dust off your copy and relive this adventure. I'm going to give this book an 8 out of 10. It is a truly epic start to an awesome saga. Now, I've given him shout out before, but I'm going to do it again. This is for Raphael Perry, who at the time of this review, which is March of 26, he is up to book 6. He's reading through all these books right now. So have a look at his channel. I'll put the link in the description and see how he's getting on. You know, he basically reads through all the adventures and he plays through to the end. He's really good. He's got a great voice for reading aloud these adventures, and you can kind of just immerse yourself into that story that he's telling. So yeah, check him out. He's really good. Okay, that's my review for Flight from the Dark. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Please comment, let me know your thoughts of this classic series. And if you think you know someone who might like this channel, maybe share it out. The next book I'm going to review is, of course, book 2, Fire on the Water. Fire on the Water, yeah. So that's going to be the next one I'm going to review. So take care in the meantime. I'll catch you in that review.